The One Piece sign is off. And you know why? Because today's video is not about One Piece. It's actually about another manga that I feel like most of you have probably heard about. It started being released about a year and a half ago, and it goes by the name of Kagurabachi. So, Shonen Jump is actively looking for more and more replacements for when One Piece goes out, for when all their big shows go out, which I think all of them have, right? One Piece in its final saga, MHA is done, JJK is done, Bleach, Naruto, all those have been done for years now. So Shonen Jump is actively looking for new series to bring life to the magazine. And Kagurabachi was one of those new IPs that they picked up. And initially, people memed on this manga to hell and back because of the cover page. It's a good cover page. I never thought it was bad, but it was very memeable. I'm sure you all have seen the meme of, they call him Kagurabachi, which isn't even his real name, but they call the main character Kagurabachi, and it's the picture of him doing this with a sword, and it's just super edgy and super memeable, so I got it, right? I get why people made fun of this series initially, but of course, a couple chapters came out and people were reading it, and nobody exactly thought it was bad, but it wasn't necessarily good. So when it first released, I read about 6 chapters of it. I kept up with it week to week to week, and after 6 chapters, I said, okay, this is fine, nothing special yet, so I dropped it. It was about 12 chapters, but yeah, I ended up dropping it pretty early on. And one of the main reasons why is because of that sign right there, One Piece. So when it comes to manga, and One Piece especially, I am a veteran in the field. I'm not trying to toot my own horn or suck my own cock here, but I have literally been reading One Piece for over 18 years now. It has been with me throughout most of my life, right? So I'm pretty well versed in One Piece because of that. I've watched the series 3 to 4 times in different dubs, right? I think I watched it once or once and a half in dub, and then twice in sub all the way through, start to finish. I've read the manga twice all the way through, and it's like, yeah, like I know what I'm talking, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I can talk about One Piece for hours on end. You guys have seen it firsthand. So yeah, I am pretty well versed in One Piece. I'm pretty proficient, and catching up and staying proficient in another manga at the same time is a high bar, right? I wouldn't do that for just any series. So that's why I dropped Kagurabachi early on, because I felt like it's a series I would have wanted to talk about, but it wasn't necessarily worth it at the time. But recently, I picked it back up. And I picked it up because a friend of mine, Parvision, and another friend of mine, BDA Law, started reading it. Parvision is totally caught up. BDA is on chapter, I think, 25 right now-ish. So because of that, I said, okay, time to rip off the Band-Aid, time to go in it one more time and reread through the entire thing. So I sat down, and it now has 77 chapters, by the way, but I sat down a couple days ago, and within 24 hours, I shit you not, I read through the entirety of Kagurabachi. I know. Was that a waste of a day? Did I end up forsaking my social life? Did I take a day off of work for that? And the answer is yes. And I read all 77 chapters, and I utterly enjoyed Kagurabachi. All my initial complaints I had with it are gone. One of the main complaints was the art style. The art style wasn't bad, but it didn't feel polished. And in the earlier chapters, the paneling is awful. You have some panels where it has like the Chainsaw Man thing. I don't know if you guys read Chainsaw Man, but in Chainsaw Man, Fujimoto does this thing where whenever a character realizes something or whenever they have a late reaction, he does 3 to 4 panels of the same shot, but slightly altered. Kagurabachi tries to do the same thing in the first couple of chapters, but the characters don't change expressions. They just add more dialogue without changing the image, and I thought that was really lazy. Right? I'm not a mangaka. I know I don't have that work ethic, but even I thought that was lazy, right? I was like, okay, he put in 0 effort here. But the author knew that he was sleeping on his laurels, and he actually went back to the first chapters and he redrew it, and he changed up the paneling, and he learned from it moving forward, which I highly respect. I think it takes a big author in 2024, any artist, to go back to their previous work and fix it, because that means that they know that they had a problem. So right there, I thought that was great. You know, there's major improvements that I have seen through the art style as time has gone on. And as far as the plot goes, it was always, well, not always, in the first couple of chapters, it is very simple. Chihiro, which I'm going to spoil some things, by the way, in case you haven't read it and you want to read it. I'm not going to go super deep, but I got to scratch the surface, right? I'll touch on big plot points here or there. I won't talk about the big plot twist, but I do want to outline what the story is about. But initially, you learn that Chihiro is a swordsman. He's a regular kid, but he becomes a swordsman because his dad got murdered. And his dad isn't just a regular old dude, but his dad is actually the best bladesmith in the world. He's number one. So Japan, out of nowhere, was engaged in a war against an island that randomly popped up. Think of it as being invaded by aliens, but instead of aliens, it's Hawaii. Right? Hawaii pops out of nowhere in your backyard and they're now fighting you. And by the way, those Hawaiians have magical weapons and they're cracked out the wazoo. That is what happened to Japan. Insane, right? Insane. Hawaii strikes back in 2024. Pretty crazy, right? But that's what happens. So the dad ends up crafting 6 blades to help Japan fend off this alien island invader. And these blades aren't just regular swords. They are, in One Piece terms, think of them as swords that ate mythical devil fruits, because they have crazy ass abilities. To spoil one sword, which is the first sword we actually see, one sword has the ability to create water and manipulate water, create ice, and also manipulate lightning. 3 for 1. Actually, all of these swords so far have kind of followed the theme of having 3 separate abilities. Of course, they branch off like with variations, but 3 main abilities inhabit each blade. And I think that's a beautiful premise. I love the way it's capped off at 3. I like it. And yeah, these swords are busted beyond belief. So the person who killed Chihiro's dad ended up taking all 6 blades for themselves. We don't know why they want them. All we know is that they have them, and they're slowly distributing them and trying to gain full possession of them. So what I mean by full possession is that in the war, because there were 6 blades, there were 6 swordsmen. And those swordsmen are inherently tied to the blade. Because of that, you can't wield the sword until you kill the former sword bearer. So it's a whole thing where you have to protect the original sword bearers, or else the evil people will take over their swords. Think of it like, One Piece example. Think of it like Zoro. Imagine if somebody stole Zoro's swords. The Katetsu blades, Enma, wow, I just blanked on Kuina's blade all of a sudden. The Wado Ichimonji. Imagine somebody steals all of Zoro's swords, but they can't use those swords until Zoro dies. That is the best way to explain it. So it's this whole cat and mouse thing, protecting the sword bearers from the OG war, and also stopping the villains and getting our swords back before they can use them. So that's what the story is pretty much revolving around. And there's a lot of plot twists here or there. We start learning more about the organization that killed his dad. Were they justified? Were they in the wrong? This war is also kind of a mystery because you learn more and more about it. And you start realizing, which, kind of a spoiler, but it's a conspiracy that I think people would have had since chapter 1. But it's kind of like what Doflamingo said at Marineford. Who are the heroes in a war? The pirates, the Marines? Well, it's technically whoever wins the war, right? Because the person who wins the war writes history. And because Japan won that war in Kagurabachi, they're the heroes. But if you're asked the Islanders, they're the villains. So it's kind of playing with that concept, and it's really fun seeing how it's evolving and how more and more plot twists are being involved in that storyline. So yeah, overall, I think the overarching plot is pretty solid. Basic, yes, but fun. It is pretty fun. So that is when we go on to the main character now, because I want to talk about him for a second, Chihiro. I initially didn't exactly like him because he felt like a wet paper bag, right? He's just a basic MC, just, let me find this guy, I want to avenge my dad. And I thought that was kind of boring. And I'm not saying he changes a whole lot, but you do see progression as time goes on. And based on the characters that are around Chihiro, he changes as well. Like, he starts getting more and more companions as the chapters go on, kind of like Luffy, right, gathering the crew. He kind of goes through all that, and I really like his interactions with everybody. I think the humor in Kagurabachi is pretty top-notch. Of course, it does have the shonen problem of introducing too many characters, but Kagurabachi, unlike One Piece, isn't afraid to kill characters left and right. You know, if a guy should die, there's a pretty high chance they are going to die, which I think is kind of cool. And it shocked me. So you meet a villain very early on, and I thought he was going to be like a Kid Law, Gajeel type character out of Fairy Tail. I was like, oh, this guy's going to be like our Gary, right, from Pokemon. He's going to be our rival. And he's going to be with us for a long time. He has that energy, has that vibe. And then Chihiro kills him. Chihiro kills the guy and then breaks his sword. And I'm like, yo, that's unexpected. Kagurabachi is not afraid to kill some of its villains. And I enjoy that. And they're also not afraid to kill a lot of the B tier characters, is I guess a way to put them. Because we do meet a lot of characters in the show and in the manga who I saw them initially and I was like, okay, like I'm not gonna remember like these 5 people at once. Like they introduced a couple of squads and I'm like, okay, like this is too many people, right? They're running into the shonen trope of just introducing too many damn characters. But they kill them. Like if you don't remember their name off rip, there's a good chance they're just gonna die. It's kind of like not the Scabbers, that's a bad example. Like the Oniwabanshu out of Wano, right? We met a bunch of those bozos, we got their names. Did they ever matter? No. The Yakuza leaders out of Wano, we got 4 of them. Did they matter? No. Hyogoro mattered, but he's not one of the 4, right? Hyogoro is like the overarching Yakuza boss, and he matters, but the ones who were under him, like the East, West, South, and North, like they did not matter. We never had to be introduced to them. They're just a bunch of fodder. And when Kagurabachi introduces characters of that tier, they kind of get written off. I think the author knows their purpose. Like, they're supposed to come in, they add filler, they show off some cool abilities here or there, they flex with the main villain, and then they just die. And I kind of like that it's not afraid to pull those punches. It kind of gives me the same vibe of JJK in the early days where nobody's really safe. And I respect it. I respect a manga and an author that's willing to, rip the band-aid off in certain instances. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. And another thing I really enjoy, of course, alongside the deaths, is the action. I don't want to draw too many comparisons to One Piece, but One Piece, the fights in One Piece, when they get going, they are good, right? The final fights in an arc where Zoro's fighting a guy, Sanji's fighting a guy, and Luffy's fighting a guy, those fights are generally really well received. I still enjoy them a lot. But Oda has fallen into kind of this area where he doesn't really focus on fights as much as he used to. And he's even talked about this with the introduction of Gear 5th, right? When Oda did the Gear 5th interview, he talked about how all fights are kind of the same and how he wanted to really switch things up. And that's why he introduced Gear 5th. Right? He said, oh, anybody can draw a fight. I wanted to do something a little bit special. So Gear 5th was introduced. Oda's not stepping away from fights, but he wanted to simply switch up how he tackles them, which is very apparent, right? Ever since Wano, fights have been a little bit different, right? Even the fight against Kizaru, Luffy fought him for just like half a chapter, a quarter of a chapter here or there, and that's pretty much it. There wasn't exactly a clear winner. I mean, obviously, Luffy came out on top, but there wasn't like a fight to the death, right? We didn't beat Kizaru and then move on, right? It was a lot of plot things going on the side. And then even Luffy versus the Gorosei. Luffy fought them for a little bit, saw they regenerated, and then Luffy said, okay, peace out, we're leaving. And then even here in Elbaf, there hasn't really been a fight yet. Unless you count Roto, but we just kind of ran from Roto. You know what I mean? Like, One Piece is all about building up the story, building up the plot, and then we get to the villain, and then we beat them, right? Whereas in Kagurabachi, if we see anybody from the opposing faction, dude, Chihiro is just not afraid to just instantly go at them. I kind of enjoy that. Not saying One Piece is bad, by the way. I'm not trying to diss One Piece, but I'm saying, like, the style and the pace of it is very different. They try to accomplish different things. One Piece is focused on the story, whereas Kagurabachi, it is focused on the story, but they also put in a lot of fights because the fights are central to the story. Right? For One Piece, we're trying to uncover this grand adventure. We're trying to uncover ancient history. But in Kagurabachi, it really is all about revenge and fighting. And I will admit, there are a couple of times in Kagurabachi where I thought of Zoro. Because, you know, obviously the whole thing is about swords and katanas, so I thought about Zoro a couple of times, and I was like, yo, Zoro should have been in Kagurabachi. I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but if Kagurabachi could poach one character, I'd say Zoro needs to be in here. Because this manga really is all about swordsmanship. Yes, there are like wacky abilities, like I said earlier. There's like the whole, you know, ice blade, thunder blade, water blade, whatever. And there's like crazier blades as we go along the way, which one of my favorite blades, Tobi Mune, it has like this crazy like crow feather ability where like feathers fall from the sky and the guy can teleport to each individual feather and just go at it. It's crazy. And I really just love how unique these blades are. And while the abilities are one thing that makes this series special, it also is starting to introduce swordsmanship in as well. Because, not to spoil anything, again, right? But Chihiro's like, hey, I can't use my swords abilities for a while, so I have to rely on swordsmanship. Oh shit, I don't know anything about swordsmanship. So he starts trying to learn like new styles. He gets an EI, which is like super special because he has to like switch the handles or whatever. And I was like, yo, like Zoro needs to be here. And there's even one character who does remind me of Zoro because it's like this villain, right? There's this villain, he's on a mission to do some bad things. And then while he's doing bad things, he sees the main character. And the main character is trying to learn swordsmanship. And the guy's like, okay, I gotta focus on my mission and kill this person. I gotta focus. And then kind of, well, not like Zoro, because he's not like super meatheadish. But the guy was like, okay, forget the mission. I want an actual sword-to-sword battle with a swordsman. And I was like, bro, dude, we need characters like that in One Piece, all right, for Zoro. Because I thought about it, and it's like, yeah, Zoro fights swordsmen here or there, but even with King out of Wano, right? King was like, oh, like, I never said I was a swordsman, Zoro, and then he, like, kicks him, he throws his blades away, and it's like, yeah, like, I kind of feel like Zoro needs to be here, brother. Like, you know, Zoro wants to be the world's strongest swordsman, but he's fighting dinosaurs, he's fighting Rob Lucci, it's like, oh, God, man. Yo, Zoro, you need to, like, I don't know, like, get lost and wander into Kagurabachi for a month, and then go back to One Piece and fight Mihawk, right? But yeah, I thought that was really cool. And another thing I like about Kagurabachi is that it's pretty fast-paced. There's one character, for example, and you hear about him over and over and over, and he's one of the main reasons why Chihiro can't use his abilities, because in this plotline, they're like, hey, this guy's watching the entire city of Japan. The minute anybody touches a blade and uses its ability, he will show up. And I'm used to One Piece pacing, where when we hear that somebody's about to show up, it's like 30 chapters, man. Freaking dragons coming. You know, Kuma's coming, Kizaru's coming, Saturn's coming, Blackbeard's coming, and then like 30 chapters go by, and then they finally arrive. Or they arrive when everything's done. But I swear to God, it was so cool. But in Kagurabachi, the main character fights this guy, and they both pick up their blades despite knowing that this being in the sky is watching with his ability, and the minute they touch their blade, this guy literally comes in and kills two people. He just spawns in and just slices heads off, and I'm like, yo, no time wasted. Like, literally, activate ability, main villain shows up. I was kind of blown away by that pacing, man. And, you know, sometimes series get too fast for their own britches, but I don't think that's doing Kagurabachi any disservice. And the thing is, too, is that when reading this series, or any series, you know, at that point, right, whether it's JJK, My Hero, Demon Slayer, whatever, we have to remember that not every series, I don't think any series actually wants to be like One Piece. You know, One Piece, it's going to go on and on and on until Oda feels like it's come to its proper conclusion. He wants a grand adventure. But One Piece is also a curse to Oda. He's talked about it many times, and I'm sure if you watch my videos, I've talked about it before, but Oda has talked about how he cries when he goes to parks, when he sees families. He'll go to a park, he sees a happy family playing with their kids, and Oda cries. He tears up because he realizes that he has no time to spend with his family. He missed his kids growing up because he's just so focused on One Piece. One Piece is his life. He's been with it for so many years now. And like I said, it's a blessing because Oda's series is so popular, but at the same time, it's a curse because it's so popular he can't walk away from it and he can't rush the ending. So I really enjoy how condensed Kagurabachi is, and other, shonens are as well, where they know what they want to get done, the plot isn't super complex, and they're moving at a pretty good pace, right? They're moving pretty fast. I think, if I had to guess, I think Kagurabachi would be done in about 300 chapters, which is a lot, but I think it'll max out at like 400, 300. Oh yeah, another thing I really enjoy about Kagurabachi is definitely the side cast of characters who forms around Chihiro. You meet this character named Hakuri. Sorry if I pronounced anything wrong, by the way. It's still like fresh in my mind. I'm gonna reread it again because I really enjoyed it and I want to be like proficient in talking about Kagurabachi. But Hakuri, for example, he starts off as an absolute coward, kind of like a Zenitsu Usopp type of character, and that's never been my favorite trope. I hate cowards in any real media. It's just not great. Unless they glow up, I'm just not effing with them, dude. That's just how it is. Like Usopp, for example. Usopp early on, I tolerated it as a kid, right? Because I've been with One Piece for so long. When I was a kid, I tolerated Usopp because I always knew that he would become that guy. And then even nowadays, I still hold that hope that here in Elbaf, he's going to be that guy. But it's just taken so long that I kind of feel jaded in a way. So much so that I'm starting to despise Usopp at times. Like, I still wish him the best, and I still enjoy him in some moments. But I just want him to grow up already. It's just been so long. But for Hakuri, for example, he starts off as a coward, but by the end of his arc, in like 30 chapters or so, he completely changes. He learns his ability, he gets stronger, he starts standing up for what he believes in, he stands up against his family, and it's like, yeah, like, that's kind of what I hope happens to Usopp, man, but we'll see. But what I'm trying to say is that I think they play with the coward trope really well. He's a great sidekick to Chihiro. Well, not even, sidekick's like the wrong word, but he's a great partner. And then the third character we get, which is the most recent one, she's also really cool. She's kind of a badass, which I enjoy. I feel like, I'm getting like sexist territory now, but I feel like a lot of mangas don't always write female characters the best. Like, I don't like the whole damsel in distress trope too often. Like, once in a blue moon, sure, yeah, why not? I feel like we always need a damsel in distress, but sometimes I do want to see like a badass female, right? I feel like a lot of people do. And that's one of the reasons I enjoy JJK a lot. Yeah, the females in JJK, they kind of get their ass whooped, but they put up decent fights, man. They're brawlers, brother. And here in Kagurabachi, they're brawlers too. One of my, I guess two of my favorite characters, they're both girls, and it's like, yeah, they kind of kick ass when they need to. See, I enjoy that a lot, and just the backstories we get from some of these characters, I think, is really well done. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's to the point. But I think a lot of these backstories are things that people can really, I wouldn't say relate to, because you gotta imagine it's like fantasy. But yeah, it's stories that I think would resonate with some people, though. I think it will tear at the heartstrings here or there, or pull at the heartstrings. Overall, man, I just really like Kagurabachi. I think the characters are all super cool as well. They have so much aura. They aura farm the hell out of everything. And I probably will be doing Kagurabachi reviews moving forward. I don't know how, when, or why. Obviously, it's tough because I have a One Piece channel. Like, I make 5 or 7 One Piece videos a week. And it does feel weird to me if I were to do Kagurabachi, because it would just be like one Kagurabachi in a sea of freaking One Piece. So, like I said, I'm not too sure I'm going to do it yet. I might throw it on the main channel. I might throw it on like a side channel. Or I might just make it exclusive. It really depends on how well this video is received. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not too much else to say. I hope you guys give Kagurabachi a chance. I've seen some people saying like, oh, like I've read 10 chapters, I didn't enjoy it. It's just another shonen. And I get it, right? There's a lot of shonen out there, especially if you're in One Piece. Maybe you don't want to pick up another one. But if you have time on the side, if you really want something new and fresh to check out, I do recommend Kagurabachi. I think it's super solid. It won't be a waste of your time, and hopefully you're willing to give it a chance. I feel like the Kagurabachi rep here, but I really did have fun, man. And with where the chapters are at, I'm excited to see who dies next. But yes, thank you guys so much for spending time here. Thank you for watching this video. Sorry if I just kept on rambling, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out there. I wanted to get it documented, and yeah, I'll catch you guys later.